It happens millions of times a day across the geography of Germany. A consumer tilts back their head, drains the last drops of a carbonated drink, and in that exact, unremarkable second, the object in their hand undergoes a radical economic transformation. The liquid is gone. The thin PET plastic shell that remains holds virtually no inherent commodity value on the global recycling market. It is, by every physical definition, garbage. Yet, if you throw this bottle onto the street, it will not stay there for long. Someone will pick it up, not out of a profound sense of environmental duty, but because this empty vessel is effectively a minted coin. It is worth exactly 25 cents. It retains a legally created cash value entirely divorced from its material worth. This is the German deposit system, a nationwide regulatory mechanism that hacks human disposal behavior by attaching a ghost currency to everyday packaging. But this 25-cent price tag is not a single refund or a polite suggestion. It is the entry point into a multi-billion euro shadow financial system.
A mandatory deposit, a standardized cryptographic ink, strict retailer take-back duties, reverse vending data streams, and a massive national clearinghouse coordinate an invisible high-speed market. The bottle is no longer just packaging, it is a financial instrument, carrying a liability that must be settled. And the moment that bottle is crushed, an invisible wire transfer triggers across the country, moving capital between bitter corporate rivals. We are looking at a system that turned waste into a bearer bond.
To understand how an empty bottle becomes a bearer bond, you have to look at the historical crisis that forced the market's hand. For decades, Germany operated smoothly on a traditional reusable system, known domestically as Mehrweg. Heavy glass and thick plastic bottles were sold with a small, manageable deposit, usually 8 or 15 cents, and they were returned, washed, and refilled up to 50 times by local breweries and bottlers. That reusable loop still exists today, operating on entirely different logistical rules, transportation networks, and deposit amounts. But in the late 1990s, the global beverage industry discovered the cheap, disposable allure of single-use PET plastic and thin aluminum cans. The market was suddenly flooded with Einweg, single-use packaging that was consumed once and instantly discarded. The national reusable quota collapsed overnight. Trash piled up in public parks, choked municipal bins, and filled landfills at an alarming rate. In response, the German government triggered a statutory trapdoor. In 2003, they legally mandated a 25-cent deposit on single-use beverage packaging. But the initial rollout was a spectacular, chaotic market failure.
Supermarkets, furious at the heavy-handed mandate, created isolated, weaponized island solutions. A consumer would buy a bottle at a discount store and could only return it to that exact corporate chain. If you brought an Aldi bottle to a Lidl supermarket, the machine would simply reject it. The consumer held a 25-cent asset that was suddenly illiquid. Retailers used inconvenience as a shield to protect their fragile logistics networks. The entire system nearly collapsed under its own friction. It took a severe government ultimatum to force bitter retail competitors to sit at the same table. In 2006, the retail and beverage industries jointly created the DPG, the Deutsche Pfandsystem GmbH. The DPG is not a government agency or regulatory body. It is a private command center designed to unify the chaos. Their mandate was to create a universal language for trash. They mandated that every covered single-use container must carry a standardized marking, and every retailer with a floor space larger than 200 square meters must take back any single-use bottle made of the same material they sell, regardless of where it was originally purchased.
The statutory 25-cent rule applies specifically to these covered single-use containers, legally separating them from the old 8-cent reusable glass network. The government set the price, but private industry had to build the plumbing. They essentially had to invent a fiat currency clearing system for garbage, one that could process billions of microtransactions a year without a single central bank, turning every supermarket aisle into a localized branch of a national packaging registry.
The true protagonist of this economic engine is not the consumer, nor is it the retailer. It is the DPG marking itself. It looks to the naked eye like a simple, unassuming logo, a stylized bottle wrapped with a can and an arrow, but it is in reality a military-grade anti-counterfeiting device. If an empty piece of plastic is worth 25 cents and it costs only a fraction of a cent to print a label, the incentive for systemic fraud is astronomical. Criminal syndicates could theoretically print millions of fake labels, stick them on foreign, non-deposit bottles, and drain supermarkets of their cash reserves. To prevent this catastrophic vulnerability, the DPG marking is printed using a highly regulated proprietary security ink. The exact chemical composition of this ink is a closely guarded industrial secret, tightly controlled by a handful of licensed printers, and it is visible only under specific infrared light frequencies. The reverse vending machines, manufactured by specialized technology companies like Tomra, act as the vigilant gatekeepers of this system. When you insert a bottle into the machine, it spins the plastic rapidly.
It reads the standard barcode to identify the exact product, brand, and material. But crucially, its highly calibrated optical sensors hunt for the specific infrared signature of the DPG ink. If the ink is missing, or if the spectral signature is even slightly off, the machine decisively spits the bottle back out. The incentives driving this interaction are fiercely adversarial. The machine must be entirely paranoid. A supermarket manager inherently hates the physical reality of the deposit system. The machines break down frequently, they smell like stale beer and sticky soda, and they consume highly valuable retail square footage that could otherwise be used to sell profitable goods. Furthermore, the retailer pays out 25 cents in cold cash or store credit every single time that machine swallows a valid bottle. If the machine accepts a counterfeit label, the supermarket loses real money directly from its bottom line. But the retailer also possesses a massive overriding motive to keep the machines running perfectly. In the brutal economics of retail, foot traffic is everything. A consumer carrying a heavy bag of empty bottles is a consumer carrying guaranteed purchasing power.
They return the bottles, print the white receipt, and almost always immediately walk into the store to spend that found money on groceries. The reverse vending machine operates as a mandatory loss leader disguised as progressive environmental policy. It legally forces the customer back into the store ecosystem. The entire physical architecture of the machine, the cryptographic ink and the barcode registry, is built to perfectly balance the retailer's deep fear of automated fraud against their desperate structural need for customer retention.
The true friction of the entire system activates the precise moment the bottle is accepted into the dark interior of the machine. Consider the life cycle. A consumer buys a cola at an independent gas station in Munich and pays the mandatory 25-cent deposit at the register. The gas station collects the physical cash. 2 days later, that same consumer travels across the country to Berlin and feeds the empty bottle into a reverse vending machine at a local penny discount supermarket. The machine spins the bottle, reads the barcode, verifies the infrared DPG ink, and prints a paper receipt for 25 cents. The consumer spends it at the register. Stop the clock right there. The gas station in Munich currently has an extra 25 cents sitting in its ledger. The penny supermarket in Berlin is down 25 cents. Now, multiply this geographical imbalance by tens of millions of chaotic, unpredictable human transactions every single day. If left unresolved, urban supermarkets would rapidly bleed cash, while remote highway gas stations hoarded vast sums of deposit money. This is exactly where the DPG deposit clearing system steps in to save the market from collapse.
The moment the penny machine accepts the bottle, it executes a lethal, irreversible physical action. It crushes the plastic flat. This violent act is not just for efficient storage, it is an absolute financial necessity. Crushing the bottle permanently destroys the DPG ink and the barcode, ensuring the 25-cent asset can never be fraudulently pulled out of the bin and redeemed a second time. The physical bottle is dead, but a digital ghost is immediately born. The machine compiles a highly encrypted data packet containing the scanned barcode, the exact timestamp of destruction, and the machine's unique identification number. This data packet is fired instantly to a central clearinghouse. The clearinghouse algorithm looks at the barcode, identifies the original bottling company that issued the drink into the market, and automatically demands the 25 cents.
The clearinghouse then securely routes that money back to the penny supermarket in Berlin to make them whole. It is a massive, automated debt reconciliation system running silently in the background of everyday life. But here is the central, unavoidable conflict of the mechanism. What happens when the loop breaks?
What happens when a bottle is thrown into a public park trash can, accidentally incinerated, or lost at the bottom of a river? The consumer paid the 25 cents at the checkout, but the clearinghouse never receives a destruction claim. The bottle is never crushed by a registered machine. This creates a highly controversial economic phenomenon known as Pfandschlupf, or deposit slippage. The original filler or retailer who sold the bottle keeps the 25 cents forever. They collected the deposit, and the liability simply vanished into the ether. Industry estimates suggest this unredeemed ghost money generates hundreds of millions of euros in pure windfall profits for the beverage industry every single year. The system is structurally designed to incentivize environmental return, but it quietly, systematically profits from human failure. And the boundaries of this system are constantly expanding. In January 2024, the German government aggressively expanded the deposit obligation to include single-use plastic bottles for milk and mixed dairy products, a massive category previously exempt due to intense industry lobbying regarding hygiene concerns about rotting milk clogging the sensors of reverse vending machines. The system is now absorbing the new complexity, forcing dairy producers into the clearinghouse network and expanding the footprint of the phantom economy. Every regulatory expansion creates new data streams, new geographic clearing routes, and new, highly profitable opportunities for slippage. The German deposit system ultimately reveals a brutal, undeniable truth about human behavior and market design. Morality is a remarkably weak incentive, but pricing is absolute. For decades, earnest environmental campaigns begged consumers to recycle out of a sense of civic duty. They largely failed. But the exact moment the state attached a synthetic 25-cent fiat value to a piece of garbage, the streets cleared. The deposit system fundamentally altered the urban landscape, creating an unintended but highly visible shadow economy. In every major German city, Pfandsammler, or deposit collectors, walk the streets late at night, peering into public bins with flashlights. They act as the relentless arbitrageurs of the trash market, capturing the 25-cent value that wealthier consumers are too lazy or too rushed to claim. The plastic bottle becomes a literal mechanism of informal wealth transfer, from the careless to the desperate. But if you look deeper into the architecture of this clearinghouse, it systematically dismantles our basic understanding of modern commerce. When you purchase a drink packaged in a covered single-use container, you are not actually buying the plastic.
You are legally renting it. The 25 cents is a mandatory deposit on a microscopic, momentary lease. The supply chain has effectively refused to surrender ownership of the material, forcing you to act as an unpaid, temporary courier before you return their asset to the centralized clearinghouse. It forces us to ask a terrifying, unresolved question about the future of physical goods in a resource-constrained world. If a government can successfully mandate a sprawling financial tracking, cryptographic marking, and debt return system for a cheap plastic shell, what happens when this precise logic scales globally? What happens when every single piece of packaging, every lithium battery, every electronic component, and every garment you purchase comes with a mandatory clearinghouse-backed digital deposit? The era of the final transaction, where you buy a product and it simply becomes yours to discard at will, is permanently closing. You are no longer a sovereign consumer. You are merely a temporary node in a continuous, inescapable loop of returning what was never truly yours.